Okay, so as mentioned, the foundation is an organization that really believes in the interconnectedness. And in order for us to thrive together as a community, it's important that we invest in one another. And as we've continued to evaluate how we are investing in community and review our discretionary grant making practices, we are constantly undergoing analysis and refinement of what that looks like. And so through our continuous listening to community and receiving feedback through our surveys, focus groups, community partners, and conversations, we recognize that there is an opportunity for us to provide even more diverse support to nonprofits and community organizations, because there is that need for additional, capacity building support for organizations to sustain their missions long term. And so this feedback and this recognition is a significant part of what sparked and inspired the Community Foundation to start this partnership with Catchafire. And so what Catchafire is, for those who are a little bit less familiar, it is a web-based platform that connects community-based organizations with highly skilled volunteers. And so the investment of the foundation allows for organizations to participate in this at no cost to the organization. And it ensures that there's access to resources critical for organization stability, growth, and success. And it really helps to level the playing field. There are many highly effective nonprofits, often led by people of color, who experience inequitable access to resources to do their important work. And so with that, our investment, we have prioritized those folks along with rural-based organizations, smaller organizations for Catchafire eligibility. But if you're not signed up to have Catchafire, if you don't yet have access, please reach out to me directly after this meeting. I'm happy to give you more information around that. And so once an organization does have access, as you can see here, they're able to log into the platform and get matched with an expert volunteer around a variety of supports. So there's capacity building around everything from finance and operations, fundraising, marketing, communications, program management. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because there are resources available that helps walk you through how this works. But there are different ways that nonprofits can get support. One of the quickest ways is through a 1-hour phone call that can be matched with a volunteer and help them with anything from, tech support to, I'm doing strategy planning for my board. How can I start? There's also ways for you to search by a project template. In the registration, a lot of you mentioned wanting to learn more about marketing and website design. All of those are options on the Catchafire platform, and you can click and search by topic and find different projects that are already made up for you there. And then you can explore bundles. So it's just a group of projects that you can do together. For example, if you need to create a website from scratch and build it, instead of thinking about all the different components and trying to piece that together, there are bundles that says, here's how to create a website. And within that, there are projects already laid out for you, from marketing to copywriting to image sourcing, etc. And then lastly, like I mentioned, there are webinars available through Catchafire that walks you through all these steps that shows you how to get started as well. And so organizations who have accessed Catchafire through the Community Foundation have been able to do some pretty amazing things with this resource. Since the program start, we started in the fall of 2020. We've had 146 active organizations as a whole since the inception with the foundation. Organizations have in our community have saved over $2 million, which is amazing. And a total of over 14,000 volunteer hours have been donated to this community from expert Catchafire volunteers. And I see Tyler with the snaps. I love it. Yes, very exciting. And over 120 organizations have been matched for over 900 projects. And also, as a little fun fact, of the top most frequent users of Catchafire right here in our community, 4 out of 5 of the most frequent users are arts organizations. And so we're continuing to also look at this data and it'll help us inform how we continue to partner and invest with our community organizations and community members moving forward. And also just some more information about what's available through Catchafire and how some of your peers are using the platform. Some of the most popular projects, as you can see, are translation, copywriting, transcription, video editing. Some of the most popular calls, again, 1-hour calls, pretty straightforward, are around tech systems, social media, marketing strategy, and organizational strategy. And so I will actually stop here. I know that was a lot of information, just a brief overview of how organizations have been using Catchafire. And I'll save it for the Q&A, but I'm just curious to hear if folks were familiar with all the different ways that you can utilize the resource. And with that, I will go ahead and turn things over to our friends at Catchafire, Alana, to introduce herself and share a little bit more about getting started with the platform.
Thanks so much, Ayanna, and thanks everybody. I'm Ilana Freed. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm so delighted to be sharing this space with you today. As Ayanna said, I'm the Regional Managing Director at Catchafire, supporting our partnerships throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. What that means is I work really closely with Ayanna, Ebony, Ryan, Ethan, and the incredible Community Foundation team to ensure that we're incorporating y'all's needs and supporting you with the necessary tools and information that help propel your organizations forward. So the CACF team is an amazing group of people who truly put the community first, and it's been a pleasure and privilege to learn from and collaborate with them. But as Ayanna shared, Catchafire is a virtual capacity building solution that connects pro bono professionals who are passionate about volunteering their time and talent with organizations like you. And you're the people on the ground creating meaningful change in the community. So our North Star at Catchafire is always to put you, the nonprofits, at the center of everything that we do. And our aim is to strengthen your organizations, ultimately to support the critical missions you endeavor, because you are the people who make our world a better place. So thank you for that. So today we're so proud to support, as Ayanna said, about 150 organizations throughout the Charlottesville area who collectively have completed over 900 projects, amounting to nearly $3 million in impact savings that folks may not have otherwise have had access to or been able to afford without the volunteer support on Catchafire. And so I'll briefly just share what you could use Catchafire for. So when Ayanna mentioned that Catchafire volunteers offer expertise in areas including finance and operations, human resources, and the like, what that means is if you're seeking a financial plan or financial strategy, an accounting system setup or a review, you can work with finance and accounting professionals on Catchafire to get that work done. If you're looking for support on marketing strategy, a social media audit, help setting up a social media account, translation services, graphic design support, work with a social media or a marketing or a design expert by Catchafire. And so here's how it works to get started. All you need to do is review one of the 150 pre-scoped project templates we've already created for you. You can add in details about your organization's use case, and then you can post your discrete need on the Catchafire marketplace. So then volunteers will apply to fill that need for your organization, and you are empowered to assess volunteers' applications to choose the right person to support you. We really encourage you to be choosy about whom you work with, because there are thousands of volunteers who want to help you. And you know who may be best suited based on their professional experience and their passion for your cause. And projects could take a few days' time to a few weeks' time to get completed. So in order to get you a tangible deliverable in hand, if posting a project seems like maybe too big of a lift at first, as Ayanna shared, you can always start by posting a 1-hour Ask an Expert call to consult these volunteer experts. And just a 1-hour call would provide you with advice, direction. It'll create the opportunity to brainstorm and for you to get feedback on the work you need to get done. And in terms of who you can work with, who can use Catchafire at your organization, anyone on your staff, your board, anyone who interns or volunteers for your organization can get granted a Catchafire membership to post as many needs as your organization can manage volunteers for. So you have unlimited access to get as much work done as possible. So that was my spiel for today. My colleague Tyler Manley, our head of community engagement, is also on the line as well. And we'll be coming back into view during the open Q&A portion of today's meeting to address questions you may have about Catchafire. And we'll be socializing a one-click solution that you can use to set up time with one of our Catchafire nonprofit advisors, who are also available to help you to begin with full project planning and here to help you get started on Catchafire with strategic advice. But thank you, everyone. We're so excited to hear from Sin Barreras and the Art Center in Orange.
Thank you so much, Alana. And yeah, with that said, we are going to move right into our panelists because they are the ones who are using this platform and can really provide just some of their stories that can be helpful for all of us to hear. So with that, we'll start with the Art Center in Orange. If you could please just introduce yourselves, your roles with the organization, and share a little bit about your experience getting started with Catchafire and the most significant project you've completed to date. We're interested to hear how that has impacted your organization. So I'll turn things over to the Art Center.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Anna Pillow, and I'm the Executive Director at the Art Center. And
my name is Chaylin Grant, and I'm the Administrative Assistant here at the Art Center in Orange.
And so I'll actually preface this by saying that we're a 25-year-old organization, but during kind of the pandemic, we decided to make the most of everything and try to really take a hard look at, what was working and what wasn't. And as I'm sure many can, that you all kind of had similar challenges, we realized that our community needed more than we could actually support in terms of staff. And we've always relied heavily on volunteers. So when we saw that we were able to get a Catchafire subscription through the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation, I was already familiar with the program. I had been a volunteer in the past. So when I saw that, I was like, this is amazing. This is something that can really supercharge what we're doing. And so I started things off, once we got access, making sure that everybody was signed up, because I knew there's got to be a way that we can all use this in whatever we're doing to make sure that we're having really the maximum impact. And so I started things off by really encouraging professional development for our, I say that, but we also for volunteers as well. So anybody involved with our organization who wanted to brush up on skills, because we knew as we added technology to what we were doing, that we were going to have to make sure everybody knew how to use Excel, that they had, support in that, and that there were going to be more research projects as we kind of look at our community and beyond in working with artists. We are, of course, an arts organization. So, we try to make sure that we're reaching out to artists and finding people who can really bring something to strengthen our community here in Orange and bring something new to the table. So we wanted to be prepared for that. So, for myself, this is the first time I've been an executive director of a nonprofit organization. I've worked in nonprofits for many years, and I'd seen kind of what other people had done. And I decided, I felt like I was kind of really taking on a new chapter. So I took advantage of the leadership coaching, and that really ended up helping in a big way as we had to navigate, what was going on, talking to people in our community, and also just working with my team to make sure that, I was communicating things properly and that, we were moving in a way that made sense and was consistent. So I personally, as a leader of the organization, got a lot out of that just right out of the gate. And then once Chaylin came on board, then we were able to go even further. And so I will let Chaylin talk a little bit more about one of the biggest projects that we've done to date. It's really been transformative, and it's going to make a big impact on our organization and our community.
All right, so the project that she is talking about is a Spanish translation project. Throughout our Tri-County area between Orange and 2 other counties, there is a major Hispanic presence and population. However, we haven't really been seeing them inside. And we come to find out and realize that a lot of the Hispanic population that's present here are first generation English speakers. So it's often children translating for their parents, and there seems to be a disconnect between the access that they have to community engagement and public art here. And so what we decided to do, I've been monitoring a volunteer on translating our website from English to Spanish since about December, and it's now March. They're about 90% done in translating our website. And along with that, as they complete the translation, I've been having other volunteers review and check over their work. And this has been extremely helpful because we're going to be able to reach a part of our community that hasn't been reached out to previously. So this is a great way to get them involved and really just foster a sense of community here entirely by branching out in our inclusion.
And I think that one of the things that I will add is that we don't actually have anybody on staff who speaks Spanish. So that's why we wanted to really make sure that we had kind of the double project, so that we had one volunteer who was very well-versed and had experience doing translation into Spanish from English for arts organizations. And then the second round of volunteers, and we're kind of splitting it up for them so they don't have the whole thing, to make it little bite-sized chunks. But then so the second round of volunteers are checking for, correct tenses and formality, and making sure that, the parts that are supposed to be just like we would in English, the parts that are supposed to be really fun and, more, I guess, family friendly, those are done in a more informal and, open kind of tone. And then the things where people would expect more formality, like, on our donation pages or exhibition essays, that those are more formal. And so that way we're able to really leverage the different volunteers' areas of expertise to create something that ultimately, even though we don't speak Spanish, we're hoping will show that we're open to people coming in, and that we're going to make that effort for our community members, and we're going to kind of try to meet them halfway. So it's been really rewarding to see that happen. And we've also used a lot of Catchafire stuff to help with like social media strategy, SWOT analysis. We also basically, out of our use of Catchafire, we've gotten an entire 5-year strategic plan pulled together. So really, the amount of benefit that we've received has been huge, and it has enabled us to grow and provide a really strong framework for moving forward.
Thank you so much to both of you for sharing. I have some follow-up questions, but I would love to first get an introduction by Sin Barreras, and interested to know, if you could be thinking about how you've managed that with the staff capacity that you have, because I know people hear that like, oh, that sounds great, but you don't know what we're going through, or we have these other constraints. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. But yes, I'll turn it over to our friends at Sin Barreras to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Edgar Lara. I've been volunteering with Sin Barreras, or Without Barriers, since 2015, and in October of last year, 2021, I filled the position of its first executive director. In my time, when I started volunteering, we were all volunteer, 100%, and now we have a staff of 7. That's 4 full-time and 3 part-time. That's in Charlottesville, and we also opened an office in Waynesboro late last year. We also have about 10 long-term volunteers that have been consistent for years, and another 20 plus volunteers that help us in different ways. We've been using Catchafire since it started through CACF a year and a half now. And I think we have around 19, 20 projects. The majority of them have been discussions with experts or professionals to help us get through or a better idea of what we need. We're sharing our challenges. I think we're still developing or working on our use of Catchafire, but we're happy to share our experiences. And I invited somebody too, Dan Dernberg, a volunteer of ours who has had good experiences through Catchafire, and I think he's probably been the one that we have several other people, and one of the things that I've done is try to promote the use of it. And again, like I said, we're still working on the use. I appreciate Anna and Jalen, because a lot of the suggestions you've made are ones that I still want to use. And I think because we do have some experience, I think, and I hope that we will be able to make much better use of it here soon. But I think one of the projects where it's made a bigger impact, so we had a couple team members use it for a 4-year impact evaluation report. I think the volunteer team that we have they're the primary ones that did the work, most of it, but they did put it out on Catchafire, and I think they received ultimately what was accountability coaching to just help them through the project and keep them accountable throughout to make sure they stayed on task, and they felt it was because they were meeting with this professional, I think every week or every so often, they had to have certain work done. So they found that very helpful. And the project, I think the evaluation and the work that was done with the people we serve, our clients and participants of our programs, I think that work was done, but there's still more that can be done with this project. But at least with the piece that they engaged with Catchafire on, I think that work is complete. And there's just so many more possibilities for that project, but then so many others. And like I said, I think I have a mixed experience so far, but I think I could also share and provide useful information about some of those experiences.
Thank you, Edgar. And that's really why we're here today. We understand that this is a newer resource for our community, and there are different, and I know we survey you all as well, but there are different challenges that people are working through to really making the most out of it. And so we're here to listen and also get some other lessons learned that other folks have experienced as well. With that, I'm also curious to hear from Dan from your organization, who's posted a lot of calls. Tell us a little bit about your experience with getting started with Catchafire. Oh, I think you're still muted, Dan.
Yep. Okay, better now, I hope. So yeah, I've been volunteering with Sin Barreras a little bit in the communications area, and also there's a new initiative to get some tech people. And one of the challenges that the tech team wanted to take on was looking for a new vendor for the phone and text, internet services, people phoning in and all that. We wanted to look for a different vendor. And that wasn't an area that any of us had a lot of experience with directly, professional experience. So we went to Catchafire to have some preliminary, kind of the lay of the land and what should we be looking for, and just get us oriented so we're asking the right questions. And I'm a big believer in, approaching things a little bit slowly and, try and, gather information, do it right the first time, hopefully. And anyway, the conversations we had with the Catchafire consultants were incredibly helpful in helping us rethink what the challenges were and kind of broaden the scope of what we were looking for. So it turned out, instead of just looking at phone and text, we expanded it for what, excuse me, the term's now called unified communications. And, how do we get all these different channels in one database so customer service people can access, no matter whether they come from phone or text or from a website or from email, and pulling it all together. So anyway, that was incredibly helpful to understand even how we should be thinking about the project. And we came across, a few really good consultants that one of whom has helped us multiple multiple hours of consultation. And we also came across some people, to be honest, who were kind of more salespeople, trying to network for their organization. And I would encourage people to feel free to pull the plug on those folks right away. Like, hey, listen, thanks for your time, but this doesn't seem like what we're looking for. So I'm going to end the call now. And we just had to do that a couple times. The vast majority of the people have been very helpful. And that's probably a good way to leave it for now. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Danny. You bring up a great point, in that we don't have to get things perfect, right? Like, oh, which project should I post? Or, oh, I've just spent so much time with, a certain volunteer that might not be the best fit. You can feel free to do, as you mentioned, you can post multiple projects, or if you need to post the project again, that's also an option as well. So I'm curious though to hear from you, Dan. You mentioned there is a particular volunteer that, I don't know, you said it was multiple hours or multiple projects that they worked on. Were you able to, was it just the same project, or were you able to work with them multiple, on different occasions as well?
Gotcha. For me, it was working on the same project. This was a consult. This was a consultant in North Carolina, actually, and he was helping us with kind of the lay of the land and like what's out there and what our needs might be. And this was a process of selecting software. And then once we had selected the software, then we circled back to him. He'd been in this field for, 15, 20 years of experience. And then we came back to him and said, hey, we've chosen the software now. What are some practical tips? How might we go about training people to use it? And as Edgar mentioned, Sin Barreras is now has a Waynesboro office. So, how do we coordinate the work between two different locations? And, practical things like that, which were, those kind of in the trenches, detailed questions weren't so relevant the first time we talked to them, but then they were really, really helpful the second time.
Thank you for clarifying. I know some folks were curious, if we get a great volunteer, how can we, stay connected with them? And I ask Catchafire folks to speak to that a little bit later. But I do want to circle back to the Art Center in Orange. I know you all have had some, great successes with Catchafire, but also I'm curious to hear what has been any significant challenges that you've had to overcome with using the platform, especially when first using it. How did you overcome that? Are there any lessons learned from that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'll say that for me, I think that one of the most important things whenever we have one of our projects is like, finding that correct volunteer is huge, and being willing to just say, it's not really working out. And that kind of was a learning curve, because of course, everybody who applies to a project, I read through what they say, they've got a lot of enthusiasm. So, it can kind of be hard to take somebody who's that enthusiastic about what you're doing and loves the work and say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. And so there was one project where I kind of ended up running it twice, where we were looking for some flexible HR support. So for a while, it was really just like me and Chaylin. And so we were the only ones. So when we were trying to look at hiring other people, and I was just thinking, how can we make that job description as effective as possible to find that kind of diamond in the rough, in working in an arts organization, you need people who are just so flexible and can do all kinds of things. And so it was like, let's write that. And so we tried one, and the volunteer, we kind of got a little bit out of it, but I would say that overall, we ended up having to write that job description totally, kind of in-house from scratch. So while I got some good points from it, I wouldn't call that necessarily a successful project, but I feel that in that instance, we were asking a lot. And so the other thing that really taught me was to not just be, very clear with what you need from each volunteer, but also be very clear with what you're looking for. And as we sat and I kind of closed out that first project that I had chosen, flexible HR support, instead, I then did another one because I realized that part of the problem we were having with writing the job description was that we didn't actually have an employee handbook. So it was very hard to explain kind of, we have our mission, we had an idea of what this person would do, but without any kind of guidance as to what, like just that basic stuff that you look for an employee handbook for, it was very hard to articulate, what kind of framework this role existed in. So I went back and I did another HR project that was literally for writing an employee handbook. And that enabled us to move forward in the way that really worked. And so I guess that's what I would say is, being very specific with the volunteer that you choose, but also making sure that your project is really what you need, and what you think you need might not be what you actually do.
Yeah, that is some sage advice right there. That trial and error and that learning as you're growing your own capacity along the way. And we have to understand that sometimes to do things right, we have to go slower, and that can be challenging. I think at this point, I want to surface a couple other things, but we can go back to gallery view, because I want to also get some of our Catchafire reps to also be able to chime in here as well. And we can also open it up. So if any of you who are here have questions, you can feel free to put that in the chat. I've got a particular question for Edgar, but yeah, once after that, you can feel free to unmute yourself. We're now in the open Q&A portion. Edgar, I know you mentioned that you were still finding your way to, really use Catchafire to the height that you would like. Are there any particular challenges or learnings that you want to surface right now that maybe also our Catchafire folks can help address while we're all here?
Yeah, I think Anna talked about it a little bit too. I mean, she recommended we be specific. Sometimes I can't be specific, right? What I know is the challenge that I have. And, I think there's been times where I posted a project, and sometimes it's a hesitation because I try to get other people on our team to post, but there's this hesitation because, you see these, like you think it can be a great tool. And I don't know, I think sometimes people feel a little bit of pressure with that. They're like, well, I don't know what to say. How do I make the most of it? And if I don't post it if I don't know what I want and I don't post it right, then I'm the one that maybe is failing here, right? Like it's not the Catchafire volunteer's fault, it's mine. But so I've posted with ideas of, trying to solve a challenge that I had. But I think what I have found and where it has been helpful is the conversation at first. When I don't know exactly what I want to post, I just have this idea. So I think what I want to do more is just have those conversations first. So then I can, with the goal of clarifying what I want, where I'm just sharing what the challenge is, what the problem is, to hopefully clarify that. So maybe that same individual, maybe another, or even somebody on my team, because I think that has happened too, where I was once looking for a volunteer to do the work, but I don't know, I don't think I was clear enough, but at least through the discussion, I think it clarified a few points for me, and it got me past a wall that or a block that I had, and ultimately I did the work myself. But I think it was helpful because it helped me clear that. But yeah, I think posting projects for calls to clarify what we want and just talk about the challenge that we have, I think that is something that I'll try to do more often.
Thank you for sharing that. We do have a question in the chat, but before we get to that, would Alana and Tyler, do you have any feedback from Catchafire's perspective based upon what you've been hearing?
Yeah, I'll chime in. Hey, everybody. I'm Tyler Manley from Catchafire. My pronouns are he, him. So great to hear. Like, there's so many projects that I love talking about and getting organizations to do. Like, Hearing from Anna and Caitlin talk about like professional development projects and translation, like I am always chiming about these things because since I think even if Catchafire was just unlimited free professional development, like it's just such a no-brainer, right? Getting everyone on your staff using it, posting whatever they need, kind of finding their own leadership coaches, things like that. So I love, and I love kind of hearing more about the 1 hour Ask an Expert calls, right, from Edgar and Dan, because to me, the 1 hour Ask an Expert calls, it's just a mini advisory board in your pocket. Just being able to chat with somebody who's an expert and just get advice and talk about things. And you don't maybe have to have it all figured out or scoped out in your head exactly what you need, but just kind of talk with someone that can at least help get to the point where you kind of figure out what you are lacking, what steps are next to kind of move forward with the project. In terms of questions about kind of be more specific with your listings and things, just a little bit of kind of, so the project menu that we have, right? And so for all of you who want to check it out, it's just catchafire.org/menu. You can look through it. We have that project menu that organizations choose from because sometimes that our orgs, right, we need things so badly that maybe we don't know how to ask for them, or we don't even know where we're at, right? So we want to have this list and be able to choose in a template. And sometimes we know exactly what we need, but we don't want to scope out a whole RFP to get that done. So we have this menu that organizations who know what they need or aren't sure, they can scope out and get posting projects. If you're wondering like, hey, I'm not sure how to even write this, or maybe in some cases here, right, or we post a project, you get on the phone with someone interviewing them and you're realizing maybe I'm not talking about the project correctly. Maybe I didn't list it correctly, or I'm not sure. We will do one-on-one project planning with you. So it's an optional thing. Some organizations want to just get started and post, and that's great, right? You're probably going to have some things that happen, but we actually have nonprofit advisors on our staff. You can schedule a call with us and we will walk you through. You can get on the phone with us one-on-one and we'll say, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your organization's goals? And we will over the phone scope out and write the project with you, right? To make sure that you're kind of scoping it out in the right way and having it there. Again, it takes a little bit more time, but we offer that because it's a pain, right? To go through the whole process of posting, matching up with someone. Maybe you're 2 weeks into the project and you're like, ooh, I don't know if I asked for this correctly. I'm not sure if I posted it right? So that's always available too. And then I'll quickly answer Jacqueline's question in the chat here too. About Catchafire vetting volunteers. I'd love to hear from the panelists too, talking about like when they're looking at volunteers, how they make their choices. At Catchafire, we actually specifically do not vet our volunteers. We've set up a system to allow organizations to vet volunteers themselves. And what we found is that organizations have a very different idea of who they want to choose for projects, right? Some organizations say, look, I want someone with 20 years experience to do my strategic planning project. And that's great. You can absolutely choose that person. But some organizations say, look, for my social media strategy, I really want someone who's really passionate about my cause, who really understands the work that I do, right? Because they're more of a creative for that work. So we give you examples of their work, their portfolios, their resumes, their LinkedIn pages. You're able to interview them before you make your selection. And then any point in the project, I think Dan said it right. You can always pull the plug. That's okay, right? Sometimes it is uncomfortable to turn down free help as an organization. When someone's offering to help you, it is in our bones as organizational leaders to be like, let me figure out something for this person to do because they want to help me for free, right? We encourage you not to do that. We have a lot of volunteers, and the most important thing is that you get the work done. It's not that you're doing someone a favor because they want to help you. So being incredibly picky and choosy is important. And again, if you're wondering what volunteer to choose, maybe you have a couple that you want to choose between, contact us. You can schedule a call with us. You can email us and say, hey, there's these two folks. Who do you think, right? We may ask you some clarifying questions like, are your goals to do this? Because if so, I'd recommend this person, right? But if you want to accomplish this, I'd recommend that person. We will support you and be as involved as you'd like us to be on any of these projects. You're not alone in any of this endeavor. So feel free to lean on us.
Thank you so much for that, Tyler. Such great, rich information here, making it very accessible to help navigate that. Any additional questions? It could be for our panelists, for anyone at Catchafire, or if someone wants to share an experience about their use of the platform. And if not, we also have some more questions we're happy to ask as well.
I actually have some advice to offer for vetting some volunteers. So for our Spanish translation project, it is very important to me that, or important to all of us, that these Spanish volunteers have a good understanding of what type of Spanish we're looking for. Specifically, we're looking to have our website translated from English into Latin American Standard Spanish, which is what's taught in American public school for Spanish. And then it's also just a general level of understanding that different types of dictions it's readable to all of them. And so what I've done is I will typically pick someone who has experience translating arts and cultures documents, documents related to governmental or policy matters, just because those types of documents require a lot of precision. So if I have two options and it's going to be someone who just graduated with a translation degree versus someone that's been working in a public school system for translation, I'm going to pick the person that has experience translating for a public school system because they've been working with precision in their translation for so long. And then when it goes along taking free advice with calls, I'll typically do two just to get different perspectives. There are some people who are very focused and interested in arts and culture. They have a passion for social media. And then there might be someone who takes a more statistical approach and likes to look at things that raise insights and raise our analytics data. So taking information from both perspectives is always nice, so you can kind of combine them together.
Thank you so much for adding that. If folks don't have any immediate questions, again, at this point, we've got a pretty intimate audience, so you can feel free to unmute yourselves. But if no one else has questions, I am curious if folks want to surface, like, what kind of organizational needs do you have right now? And you can feel free to unmute or put it in the chat.
Yeah, Yana, this is Ed from Yancey Community Center. I wanted to go back with Tyler again, and I may have missed this, but tell me again, how do you attract your volunteers? Because I know you said you don't vet them, but how do you contact them in terms of the database of volunteers that you have?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the volunteers in our communities actually come from a lot of different places. So one thing that we do as an organization is we partner with large companies and we build out their skills-based volunteer programs for them. So a couple examples like Patagonia or Hasbro or BMS, American Express, right? Where employees are coming directly through their employer, looking for cause areas they care about and organizations they want to give back to. The other massive source of volunteers for us is our partnership with LinkedIn. And that's a really big one for us. So every time you post something on Catchafire, the project is posted on catchafire.org. It's listed out to our corporate partners and programs. It's also posted on LinkedIn's volunteer marketplace, right? The idea there is that when you're posting something you need help with, it's not just being sent out in your area like it normally would be if you were to do it yourself. You're posting on a local page or even your local LinkedIn. It's actually blasted out all over the country. So the volunteer you end up choosing could come from across the street, right? In Charlottesville, they could come from New York City or Chicago, right? It totally depends. The idea is that we want you to find the right person for your project and be able to work with that person virtually. So our model is that volunteers are applying to you. That's actually a really important part of what we do. We're not asking anyone favors. You're not picking people and begging them for help, right? You're posting the projects and people who are interested in giving back their skills are searching by cause area, searching by organization to volunteer that way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tyler. We do have a couple of additional questions and comments in the chat. So Amanda mentioned that they are a week-old nonprofit, Families Helping Families, so all the needs. Are there any particular needs that you have? If not, I was just curious, maybe someone from Catchafire, are there any particular projects around just general organizational strategy that they could be pointed in that direction for brand new nonprofits?
Yeah, Alana, I don't want to steal all the questions if you want to jump in. A couple things, right? I think the first thing I'd recommend that you do, Amanda, is to schedule a one-on-one nonprofit advisor project planning call with us. And I linked that in the chat. I can link it again. But again, we have folks like Our nonprofit advisors, I think on average have about 12 years nonprofit experience. We have ex-executive directors on there who can talk to you about starting their own organizations and the challenges and recommending things to you. But projects I always like at the beginning are things like logo design, brand identity projects, right? Strategy projects, facilitated strategy sessions. We have board recruitment, right? Board assessment projects and things, kind of getting things off the ground, board policies and procedures, a lot of stuff to kind of get started at your organization. But the one-on-one meeting is a really nice thing to do because you're talking to someone who has a lot of nonprofit advising experience on our team that can really dive into like what you already have, what you're looking to kind of get started. And then again, depending on your availability, right? Maybe they'll recommend these 10 projects to get done over the next 2 months. Maybe they'll recommend one, right? Just based on your capacity and what you're doing. Some of our super users on the site are actually one-woman shows, right? I think Black Women Stitch, right, is a Charlottesville grantee. I think it's the second most postings on our site of any organization, and it's just one woman running the show, right? So it's going to depend on how you want to use Catchafire and think about it. Yeah, I would recommend checking with us one-on-one and we can give you advice on where to start.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tyler. I know we're coming up soon on time, so I'm just going to continue to roll through these. There was a question about how you go about becoming a sponsored Catchafire member with the foundation. Patricia, I can give you that link, but it's really an application process. So normally we do a new cohort at the beginning of each of our grant year. So in the summer we'll be re-upping, but we do have some available slots. So I can go ahead and follow up with you one-on-one, but there's just a very simple application form for that. And then after that, Catchafire reviews it, and then that's how we get folks set up. So pretty simple process, but I'm happy to follow up with you one-on-one as well. Great. Haley also says, our greatest organizational needs right now involve capacity building as we anticipate rapid growth post-COVID-19 and brainstorming and building effective, sustainable strategies as we do so. I do know that there are particular projects that take into account the effects of the pandemic as well. And I know that Catchafire, you all put out new projects as well. So do you have any that are maybe geared towards like post-pandemic, how we move from that? And of course, we know the calls are very helpful. But any additional insight regarding that?
It's going to depend. I think a lot of the needs surrounding post-pandemic building back of our organizations, I think will vary wildly by organization, right? Depending on were you an organization that kind of went stagnant for a while? Or were you an organization that like had to be out on the ground while everyone was locked in their homes, right? So there's different kind of things that we offer there. Again, I would recommend either, scheduling a call with us to talk about different projects, but even like one thing you can do, and I'll just post this here, for everyone on the line, no matter whether you ask that question or not, just click there and just start poking around. The best thing you can do, honestly, is just like start typing in things into the search bar, clicking into project categories and kind of looking around. I think you'd be surprised on how many things that we offer and what you can get done. And you can favorite those things and save them. The other thing I'd recommend doing is if you're curious about how other organizations in your area, right? So specifically Charlottesville area are using this. If you go to, and I'll link this as well. There's a lot of links I'm throwing over here, but feel free to click into them. This is cacf.catchafire.org/impact. So this is actually for your cohort. This is every match happening in real time. So you can watch just how organizations part of this program are matching day to day. You can filter by skill set and cause. So if you want to see, hey, how are other arts organizations in Charlottesville using this? You can click in and see projects that are being posted, volunteers they're matching up with. You can also do it for topics. So for example, you mentioned like strategy, right? If you look at strategy as the activity, you'll see facilitated strategy sessions, you'll see strategy conversations, you'll see strategic planning projects. Clicking in there, you can see what the organization asked for. And also, again, the caliber of the folks they're matching up with. That can be a really great way to kind of spark ideas of what you want to post or get started. And feel free to steal any great questions or project asks that you like, right? We're all here to build capacity for ourselves. You don't have to worry about plagiarizing someone's great project posting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tyler. Great. I know we're rounding down the last couple of minutes here. Are there any final questions that anyone has, or if any of my colleagues, if I missed any questions in the chat, feel free to let me know or chime in. I just want to make sure we address all of them. Great. I think we're pretty set. So a few next steps after the call. Of course, you all have plenty of links in the chat. We'll send out follow-up messages to everyone. You'll have a copy of the recording and the relevant contact information here. And as mentioned, if you would like me to follow up with you directly, feel free to put that in the chat. And I'll be following up with Patricia as far as getting you more information about how you can access Catchafire if you currently do not have it. And we also do put this information in our newsletter, which we send out as well.
Yeah, I'll just say definitely check out that impact page. There's actually been 3 matches with Charlottesville grantees since we started this webinar. So you can poke around and see those and check them out.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and thank you for putting in the chat. You can always put your questions at help@catchafire.org as well. And I do want to say a thank you to our panelists for sharing your experiences because I think it's helpful for us to hear like other ways that folks are using it. And also that a lot of times we're in the same boat, as well. Yeah, so I think that's very helpful. Also to our Catchafire folks, thank you for providing such great information, and to all of you for coming and participating as well. We appreciate everything that you do in our community, and we're just so excited and pleased to partner with you all. Wonderful.